Welcome, Neil McPherson, to the podcast, The Hydrogen Leader. I'm very happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bjorn. It's great to be able to participate this morning. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, as you know, this podcast format tries to share relevant insights from important leaders in the hydrogen economy, and you are an important leader at Parker. But also tells a little bit stories, untold stories. And I'm very excited to do this with you because over the last years, I think we had several good and trustful conversations whenever we met. And I always had the feeling that despite having your big responsibility on your shoulder, you were always approachable and very interested in also my questions and my views, despite me representing a smaller company. And I want to make the people who are interested in this format also aware of people like you. So I'm very happy to do this with you. Okay, Neil, you explained that you are leading the alternative fuel division and not the hydrogen division. And I wanted to ask you basically, why is this the case? Is that because hydrogen is not perceived as the single bullet, a single silver bullet? Can you unpack that for us?
Absolutely. Well, actually, my role has always been around the alternative fuels or alternative
Hmm.
energies. So within the filtration group, we really are quite energy agnostic. We have a very broad portfolio of filtration solutions, which can be applied right throughout a lot of different energy sources. Um, in terms of alternative fuels, we're active. Quite obviously, we're active with hydrogen, um, with ammonia, um, with other fuels like biogas, biodiesel. So in the past few years, I guess we have had a little bit additional focus on hydrogen, given the fact that it was an emerging technology, and we needed to be more present in the market to quite clearly communicate our strong value proposition. But generally, I would say that we haven't. Nothing's really changed. We've always had this energy agnostic approach, encompassing the activities around hydrogen.
So it's more that you look to the customer, and if hydrogen is a viable solution, then you provide a hydrogen solution. If another alternative fuel has more value to the customer, you provide a different solution, right?
Yeah, I mean, we what we know that the facts are that globally, we know that we have a massive increase in the demand for energy. So that's just the
Yeah.
highest level. More energy is required, and we know
Hmm.
there's also in parallel there's a requirement or there's a desire to decarbonize. So those
Yeah.
two, Parker is we've got a foot in each camp, if you like. We're supporting, our customers are the ones that are generating the power somehow. We have solutions which support every one of those applications. And then in parallel, with hydrogen, again, it's to us, it's another market requirement related to energy. And we have, for the most part, we have existing solutions which were born out of, actually, honestly, out of oil and gas, which could be redeployed into the hydrogen space. And then occasionally there is a requirement for something new, which we can develop through using our existing technologies and product portfolios. So yeah, I think, Parker is quite uniquely positioned in the fact that we are energy agnostic and we have a long history of working in that sector, So I think we're,
Yeah.
from that perspective, very strong.
And you mentioned that you, as a global company, also serve their customers in more fossil-oriented endeavors like oil and gas in the classical way. So we see now this pivot to a greener future, but some people say this is all greenwashing. So what is your view? Is there really a strong appetite to decarbonize, or is this more or less an image topic from your point of view?
I mean, from my perspective, I always remain focused on serving the customers. So we obviously we work with a broad range of applications, customers, and industries. And we're not so, we're not aligned to any particular strategy. But
Right.
what I would say in general is I do see on a daily basis um, moves that are going to lead to decarbonization. So whether that's improving the energy efficiency of a process, or whether that's switching from, let's say oil over to natural gas. So not entirely obviously carbon neutral, but definitely less polluting. Um, I see activities all over the world that are leading to decarbonization, although they're not purely, like green hydrogen. Quite clearly is
Yeah.
non-polluting. Um, other other activities will lead to decarbonization, and I think in general, I think the world appears to be moving in the right direction. With a detour here and there, but I think
Yeah.
eventually we'll get there.
Right. So, as this podcast is also, let's say, a hydrogen podcast for people who are specifically interested in the hydrogen industry, I want to dig a little bit deeper on your hydrogen passion. Yeah, because I learned from our discussions before that you have started working on hydrogen quite a long time ago, right? So, with this passion of, as you stated, delivering really industry changing products. Can you tell us, when did you start working on these on these hydrogen topics?
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. As I look in the camera, I can see my grey hair there, or actually no hair in the group. It reminds me of how long I have been in the industry. And actually, when I think about hydrogen, the journey started in about 1995. So
Yeah,
already 31 years ago. And
right.
at that time, I I joined the Dominic Hunter Group, and
Yeah.
we were a very we were a very innovative company. And actually, we just invented um, a nitrogen gas generator, which was at the time, in marketing terms, it was a product which is going to, satisfy an unmet customer need. So customers were buying nitrogen gas in cylinders or in liquid form, and obviously paying a lot of money from the gas companies. We introduced essentially a machine that pulls the nitrogen out of thin air
Oh,
and delivers the gas continuously. So at the time, you don't realize it, because I was quite a bit younger at the time, but you're actually involved with a disruptive technology that really is helping out customers. So that was kind of, we started in the, let's say, the gas business, on-site
mhm.
gas generation. And then we had an industrial product range, but then we also had developed a range of small nitrogen gas generators, which were for use inside of laboratories. So
But
supporting
that is nitrogen, not
nitrogen.
hydrogen,
No,
right?
let me continue on. So we had
Yeah, sure.
this range of generators for nitrogen, but then we
Yeah.
were working in analytical laboratories, and we saw that customers had hydrogen in their laboratory. They were using it to provide the flame inside of the gas chromatography instrument. So we saw that the customers had some challenges with again, using this customer centric approach. We saw the customers were paying a lot for hydrogen. We saw that
Hmm.
there was issues around manual handling of cylinders, and we saw there was
Yeah.
safety issues related to having hydrogen stored inside of a building right next to where people are working. So
Yeah.
we we developed a very small uh, PEM based hydrogen gas generator
Hmm.
around about 1997.
Right. That's back in the days.
Yeah, it is back in the day, but it was based on proton exchange membranes. So we had essentially what we would call an electrolyzer today was on a
Hmm.
micro scale, which was on a bench
Yeah.
top. So it included water tanks, it included the stack, the drying, everything was on a micro level. So we introduced that in around about 1997, and we started again. That was a disruptive technology. Customers could then choose something which was in their, obviously more convenient, safer, and ultimately less. It was more reliable, less administration. It really helped out the customer a lot. So we started our journey in 1995 with the product development, with a product launch in 1997, and we were
Hmm.
we were partnering at the time with an American company called Gyna LLC. They were based in Massachusetts, and they were helping us with at the time with the membranes that were going into the PEM stack. Um, and we were buying the PEM stack from them and then incorporating it into our product design. Um, and then we got the opportunity to work together with Gyna on a Department of Energy uh, long-term funded project around larger a larger PEM or and a larger electrolyzer, which would produce a half a kilogram of hydrogen continuously. So
Hmm.
the project at that time with the DOE, we were, as Dominic Hunter at the time, and then Parker, we were actually making the complete electrolyzer, and the
Huh?
Gyna LLC were providing the stack, which went inside of that machine. So we had a complete solution up and running, and we were targeted by the DOE to reduce down the price per kilogram for the hydrogen and the cost per kilogram for the capital cost of the electrolyzer. So we were really really on the cutting edge. I would say we were
Hmm.
at that time leading together
Yeah.
with Gyna. The unit was tested extensively in the United States, and you can find on the internet. Even today, you can still find out the report outs, and over time, because Parker, our philosophy is really not to build large scale industrial electrolyzers. Our purpose and our business strategy is to really be the supplier of a lot of the componentry which can go into the electrolyzer or into a refueling station or into a fuel cell that will actually enable that customer to have a better outcome or a, a better product ultimately. But Gyna, based in Massachusetts later on, um, be- I think they were acquired by Plug Power, and
Hmm. Hmm.
that basic stack design, which is obviously Gyna, that was always their, um, if you like, their expertise and that their deep knowledge, that then is transferred into the electrolyzers that Plug
Yeah.
is marketing today. So that was very early days, like I say, as Parker, between 2008 and 2012, 2013 is when we were developing that electrolyzer. Um,
But basically, the initial solution that you have worked on and created and brought to life, this is still solving today the same problem, right? So these type of hydrogen generators still exist even in the year 2026, and it started some 30 years ago, right? So you build a solution that has survived decades, more or less.
yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the interesting thing when you bring through a disruptive technology, you're a pioneer, and
Yeah.
you know, there is you're out there. I remember being a sales guy in Asia and talking about the fact that you could make your own nitrogen, you could make your own hydrogen on site. You did not need to buy it from a gas company. And people, honestly, people didn't believe it. They didn't think that such a thing was possible. And
Yeah.
how the machine works, and how how it functions and how it produces the gas was a secondary thing. The first message to get over was, actually, you can do this. This machine can deliver this outcome. How it did it was like a secondary. It was the customer had to accept that first.
Yeah.
I remember I was working on an exhibition in the Philippines, and we had a group of guys. They were the product that we had at the time was it was white and it was rectangular in shape. It was
Hmm.
a nitrogen gas generator, and I remember these guys coming into the booth and they thought it was a refrigerator. And I'm like, no, it's not a refrigerator. This thing makes nitrogen. Or this another example was the hydrogen generator. And I said, guys, you just pour in the ionized water into this machine, and then you press the start button, and then we produce hydrogen continuously at a high quality as much as you want. And
It's more or less it's more or less an engineering miracle which took a little bit of time to sink in with the customer, right?
yeah, it's the same as honestly, and I think to a certain extent, we still have that today. With even
Yeah.
today, my goodness, like 30 years later, we still have a big part of the industry is educating the public or educating the industry that you can produce green hydrogen and it can be used for all of these applications. And right now it's a pioneer. I would use the term pioneering, but
Hmm.
it's an exciting time, and it's a when I look back in my career, I remember you're like the only voice, when you've got a unique
Yeah.
technology, you're the only company talking about it. But then over the 20 or 30 years, you see the market evolving, you see competitors coming, you see um, maybe some of your patents might have expired. So then you have to reinvent the solution. Um, and when I look back on my career, I remember customers not really understanding what it is that I was doing. And then today I see there's a lot of it's become like a standardized solution. People are aware of that option. There's a much higher education and understanding within the market. And obviously quite clearly, back in the day when the young Neil McPherson started working, there was I don't even think the internet existed. It was a lot of the time people were searching through trade fairs. I would be flying over to China or going up into Thailand, and the only chance you had to meet customers was standing in an exhibition booth.
Yeah.
Whereas now customers, we take it for granted these days, but we have, wonderfully, we have access to the internet. We can find out information at the click of a mouse, and that's
Yeah.
changed things. So the the education part with electrolyzers today should be easier because of the increased communication. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think the
It's
original question as well. Sorry, I deviated a little bit, but if I think about technologies that we introduced in 1995 or 1997, they have been successful all the way through. And with a small hydrogen gas generator, we produced them in the UK and we produced them in our plant in Haverhill in Massachusetts. And we have done since the 1990s. And we must have produced over 60,000 units. It's going to be 50
yeah.
or 60,000 systems that are out
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
the cool thing about that is that, you know, because we, because we have experience in that area, albeit on a micro scale, we know about water purification. We know how important the deionized water is for that system to operate. We know about, keeping the system cool, keeping the stack cool to protect it and to maximize the efficiency. And we also know about how to dry and how to purify the gas. And we've been doing it on that micro scale for so long.
Yeah.
But then on a macro scale, today with electrolyzer manufacturers, we have everything in the balance of plant. So we make our own chillers, our own gas liquid separators, our own dryers. We have everything to offer. We have that legacy of that experience to to assist our customers to develop better solutions themselves.
Yeah, and probably what many people don't realize when they see an engineering product carved out of metal, they don't believe that behind such a metal product there can be a real story behind, like you have told, right? So there might be stories behind detectors, there might be stories behind chillers, just like you had a story to tell behind the hydrogen generator, right? And this is also, as you know, Stephen, my co-founder, is an engineer, and he is an engineer with passion. And I think this is great, and you always need to get better in this. You never can stop innovating, right? So let me come back to one thing which I find also unique about Parker and your type of work is that you said you find and explore or discover new markets. So is there a special way how Parker is doing that? To find, explore, and then serve new markets? What are the success criteria?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Parker is a big organization, and I guess I can only really speak about my own experience. I think we may we do have programs, or we do have um, strategies in place or processes in place that would assist us with the innovation process. So we do,
Hmm.
quite obviously our focus is customer centric. So we work closely with customers, and as mentioned earlier, we try to understand their needs, their pain points, and ways in which we can help them improve their process. And we do that systematically. We have the program um, which really sort of drives the people at the front, at what I would call the cold face, or at the sharp end, people who are sitting in front of the customers. It gives them some guidelines as to how to ask questions, how to go through the discovery process, capturing those customer requirements, and hopefully identifying um, gaps, gaps in the market where the customer has a requirement or specific problem which is not currently satisfied by any technology or any other competitor. And then we will collect that information. We try to do multiple customer interviews, so we don't, we'll find 10 or 12 or even more customers. We'll interview them. We'll identify all the
It's like
characteristics.
these requirement workshops, right?
Yeah,
So
we
you
call
ask, what are your requirement
yeah,
workshops?
we call it, the terminology that we would apply would be discovery. So we want to
Okay.
discover that what it is about the customer, what they need, and then we have a big picture, if you like. We collate the responses from the target group, and then we'll go back and essentially present out all of the outcomes, and then ask those customers to to develop their top picks, or what we call top picks or must-haves. So product must-have, for
Uh-huh.
example, a must-have would be regulatory approval, or it must have a certain space requirement. But then a nice-to-have would be something like, I love the question when I go to see a customer. I'll say, well, okay, forget about the current state, forget about what exists today. If I could give you a magic wand and you could be like Harry Potter, what is it that what is it, what would you really like? I think Henry Ford said that, if they asked a customer before the motor car was invented what they wanted, and they'd probably say that they would like a faster like a faster horse. What
Yeah.
they really wanted was, the unmet need was a motorized carriage, a car. And quite often that's quite liberating when you give the customer the opportunity in this kind of workshop environment to just to say what it is that what they really need help with, or what, not to be constrained by what there is today. And then obviously with that great information, then, that informs our engineering uh, teams. The colleagues in engineering then get a much a much better brief. They know exactly what the customer needs are. They know what would really, I guess, exceed the customer's requirements and delight the customer. That's another phrase that I love, to go back and see a customer and say, well, actually, we listened and this is what we've developed. That, that really helps to solidify the relationship, but then also, in a way, it brings the customer closer to Parker because they can see their ideas in something which is being developed, and that's also a great thing to happen. Um,
When I hear you speaking about the delight of the customer, what was the best project where you were excited because of the customer reaction?
I think generally I'm kind of I'm I do get excited generally with a lot of things I do, but one project that I did enjoy working on was in again back in the late '90s and the early 2000s. We worked together with an industrial gas company, and we developed a gas generator which was designed for the dispensing of Guinness beer. So
Yeah.
that had a specific gas blend. So it had a 75% nitrogen and 25% CO2 mixture. And yeah, we developed the solution very quickly, and then we deployed it we had customers in the UK, in Asia, and also in America. And that product went on. I mean, it's still sold today. So something which I worked on in 1997 is still being sold today. And I think it's exciting to think that I may have helped many people enjoy a pint of Guinness or a pint of lager all over the world. With that.
So you disrupted more or less or innovated the creation, but you didn't change the pub culture in particular in UK. You just make it better, right?
Well, we did. I mean, we improved the quality of the beverage, but then actually that's an
Yeah.
interesting thing because we we developed the solution, um, but actually we we kind of almost without knowing it, we actually solved a customer pain. So what happened was the industrial gas companies were delivering different gas mixtures to a bar. So let's say just a regular
Yeah.
bar, they would have 100% carbon dioxide for lager. They would have a gas mixture for Guinness, and they would have another pure nitrogen for dispensing wine. So they had a logistical problem. If you think about a
Mm.
gas delivery truck, they had all these
Yeah.
different gas mixtures. Well, we made a machine that actually that generated nitrogen, but also mixed carbon dioxide. So what we did was we actually quite clearly we designed and built and delivered a world class machine,
Yeah.
and we got paid for that. But actually, the problem that we were solving was a logistical problem, and
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. It's not obviously it's not directly related to hydrogen, but it's an example of like how your solution can solve a customer need, an unmet customer need. So we actually help that industrial gas company. So we changed the industry. So in the city, only carbon dioxide was required to be distributed, um,
Mhm.
as opposed to having this logistical nightmare of hundreds of different gas mixtures going to different locations. And
Yeah.
also moving the heavy cylinders around and into bars,
Yeah.
sometimes in cellars. We eliminated all of those
Yeah.
problems. Um,
Yeah.
so
No,
it's pretty cool.
that's really cool, yeah, and it reduces the complexity for the business model of these customers, right? And it's a huge additional value, yeah. Now, let's take one step back because I think Parker also has seeing the market and knows the market very well. So currently there is, let's say, somehow sometimes perceived that the hydrogen market is in some areas slowing down a bit, but in other markets as a whole, it's picking up. And I wanted to ask you about the knowledge. Which are the most attractive markets currently for hydrogen? And do you buy into the idea of slowing down, or do you see this differently?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in this dialogue, this conversation that we've been having, what I've been discussing a little bit is I guess my history of
Yeah.
introducing disruptive technology, and then specifically, let's say the example around nitrogen. Um, when you're shifting, when you're changing something, when you're introducing something new, my experience is that it takes time. I remember back in 1995, when we were were one of the global pioneers with on-site nitrogen gas generation. We were changing the industry, but I remember in those days it was tough. You know, we as a sales guy, I was measured by the sales, the orders that were coming in, and at the time we had fax machines. And I remember going to the fax machine and seeing what orders had been faxed in overnight. Um, For those younger people on the audience, a fax machine is a little bit like a photocopier.
Yeah.
Uh, so that you'd get there in the morning, there would be pieces of paper that were being transmitted overnight. So I remember going there every day at 7 o'clock and seeing if any orders
Uh,
had come in. And obviously, you know, sometimes there were, but sometimes there weren't. And my
mhm.
boss used to say to me, he used to say, you know, I see you checking the fax machine every day. I said, yeah, I'm, you know, eager to get these orders. And he said, you know, the thing, Neil, is that, you know, you've got to ask yourself, are you working hard every day? So every day, are you coming to work? Are you doing the right things? Are you communicating with customers? Have you got the right products? And I said, well, yeah, all of those things, you know. And he said, well, you just got to be patient, and it will come. And what I see, you know, back in the day in 1995, it was tough. You know, we were getting an order here, an order there, but when you have a when you're breaking into a new market, it does take a little bit of time. And what I see is what I feel like with hydrogen is that, you know, I think we have to recognize that this is a emerging space, and we are moving from well, almost from a advanced prototyping into a technology demonstration, and then beyond that into you know, the El Dorado is going to be the mass adoption and scale up. And
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
going through this process, you know. And I think the challenge that the industry has is that, again, purely my perspective as Neil McPherson, and you know, is that, yeah, I think there was a lot of hype around the market. I think there's a lot of maybe unrealistic expectations generated. But I think what I see is that there's solid progress being made, you know. And you know, we work with customers throughout the values chain, whether it be electrolyzers, refueling, or on fuel cells. Um, and we see progress.
Yeah.
I mean, quite obviously, there's some regions of the world where the progress is faster, and then some other areas that are slowing down a little bit. But overall, you know, I see good progress in all regions.
So I guess this means you're still confident that the hydrogen economy will come, but it takes a time. Do you have a view on what are the biggest challenges that we as the industry have to overcome, or do we simply have to continue working and success will finally come? Don't worry about it. What do you think?
I think, I mean, I don't think you can take. I think you have to have a strategic approach, and I think you know, you need to. I think anybody would be misguided if we, you know, if we just kind of thought everything will be okay. Don't worry about it. We'll just keep on working. I think we've got to be a bit more realistic than that. And I think,
Mhm.
you know, we've got to overcome the challenges. And, you know, obviously my home market is Europe, and I'm very well aware of some of the challenges that we have here in terms of funding, in terms of
Mhm.
the regulatory requirements that have to be overcome, and then obviously, ultimately getting the business case correct for the off takers. So, if the gas is very expensive, then it's going to be very difficult for the for the off takers to buy it. If there's a more viable solution, but I don't know. I think over time, I think with competition, with innovation, we will end up with more efficient solutions throughout the value chain, and we will end up with those economies of scale, and we will persevere. We will get there. I've no doubt. I think some of the timelines maybe have just been pushed out a little bit, but honestly, you'd read it every day. I'm sure you're the same as me on LinkedIn or any other forum related to hydrogen. You see positives, and
Yeah.
also you see about cancellations, or businesses that are unfortunately maybe either merged, or they may fall by the wayside. Unfortunately, they may go into liquidation. But I think it's classically, again, I remember there's a classic sort of model which is it's called the Valley of Death, and I think at this stage we're just transitioning between this sort of advanced prototype to demonstration to mass production. There is going to be this consolidation in the industry, but as Parker, when we're not directly touching the end use, but we are enabling those companies in the hydrogen value chain to develop better solutions, and that's what I'm focused on. And we, as Parker, we stand by those customers and help them as we can.
Great. I have one question left before we come to a close, and there is a good reason because you talk a lot about when you were young, and you now I feel you are still young in your mind. It's very impressive. But I want to ask you, what is your advice to young professionals who would love to become as successful as you, or simply to have a great engineering career? Is there any advice that you can give young people that they should pay attention to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, crikey, the time I've been in this industry for quite many years, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. So, the first thing is to find something that, first bit of advice is to find something that you enjoy working on, enjoy it
Hmm.
every day. You spend so much time at work, you've got to find something that you love, and that you can remain interested in. Um, that's the first thing I would say. Then the next thing would be, just to be curious, to ask questions, to really to try to understand. I mean, obviously, I'm very customer focused, so for me, I think somebody once said that you should spend like 2/3 of a conversation with a customer, you should be listening, and then 1/3 speaking. So always, be a good listener, understand what the customer needs are, and then ultimately, you know, also treat people similarly. So actually, with the culture within Parker, we've got a very good culture. Um, we work a lot with high performance teams. So we have a really good culture, and team working is key to that. So the other thing, of course, is just some of the sort of basics, and again, having two grown up children in the or young adults in the house. I've got a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old. Um, I do have certain sort of anecdotes that I share with them. Obviously about I think being passionate about what you do, being punctual, being like a hard worker, um, and being a problem solver as well. I think that's really important. And I've always been the sort of person that would help out. In fact, I still do it even now. Somebody might ask me in my personal life, might say, "Hey, can you help me with this task?" And I say, "Okay, I jump in with both feet and I'll help them." And then if something goes wrong, my wife will always say, "Well, my goodness, why did you, now you've got to solve this problem. Why did you volunteer? It had nothing to do with you." But I think that is an attribute that will get you far in industry. There's simple things, that I think obviously you have to have a good education, but I think your interpersonal skills and your approach to life is probably equally as important. And certainly for me, I've been very fortunate in my career. I ended up working for a great company in an area that I really enjoy. So, but I think I got there through hard work and really being customer focused and driving new product developments just by listening to customers.
So Neil, thank you very much. I think I get goosebumps listening to you, and I think it's true what you say. And what I have learned in my professional career is people remember if you help them without asking what is in for you. And this is the biggest compliment that you can give to somebody, that you take the time to help out. And I think this is what you have built your entire career on, that you not only have helped people, but you have helped a lot of customers as well. And the people remember what you did to them, that you delivered a solution when you promised it. And I think I have talked to Harry Potter, who is able to listen to the customer and then come back with the wish and deliver the wish. Yeah. So thank you for doing this, Neil. And I hope that many people will listen to your statements, because I think we can all learn from a professional like you. So thank you for doing this, Neil.
No, really appreciate it, Bjorn. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you and to talk about these things. Yeah, very, very much enjoyed our conversation. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, now an official statement to our listeners. If you like this format, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot to bring people like Neil to the channel if we want to grow this together. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.